Welcome to another season of Pro to Pro, where we sit down with entrepreneurs and successful business people and talk about their journeys to their success in their career. We go behind the scenes and have candid conversations with them and discuss health, relationships, fitness, and of course, business decisions, good and bad. If you're looking for inspiration, valuable business insights, and a dose of motivation, you're in the right place. Join me and my guests as we share our experiences, ideas, and stories that can help you on your own journey of growth and success. Welcome, and remember, keep it pro to pro. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Pro to Pro. I am here with my new friend and guest, Jim Keys. We had some technological issues of two older men in our foray of this social media platform that we're both diving into head first. Jim, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you.
Thank you for taking the time and being patient with us as we've tried to put together this broadcast for our guests, for our followers, and for our viewers. It's the challenge of internet and social media that we go through, but we're gonna push forward and move on with it. I always try to do a little bit of recon on my guests, and I do, just a little bit of information so that I have tidbits of questions that I want to ask. However, I like to keep it organic, and we spoke briefly offline a little bit, but I think your story is fascinating, and you've probably been one of the few guests that we've brought on that has had multiple careers in regard to, let's just say, the corporate world, that you can drop these names and everybody knows the businesses, the names of the companies that you were part of, and you were involved in the growth. But my show is more along the lines, and the platform for the people is more along the lines of kind of demystifying, where you are now and where you got to try to get an understanding of how you evolved to that pinnacle of your career. And I usually start by asking formative questions about family life, a little bit about influences that you may have gone through to get you to, a point where you decided to take the corporate journey and eventually become a CEO of two huge companies. So can you share with us a little bit of your background?
Sure. I think the key is that my life has been one that I would characterize as being opportunistic, in the sense that I didn't set out as a child to say, I want to go run a big company. I want to be a CEO. Honestly, I had no idea what business was, what corporations were like, the role of a CEO. I was clueless, had no clue, because I grew up in a small town environment and in a family where no one went to college, and most of my family were working in the factory or in the military, whatever, and they just didn't have that frame of reference, that experience. So the difference for me was education. It was, for some reason, I engaged in the education system. I engaged in learning. My brothers and sisters, not so much. They, did what most people do. They went to school. They got out as soon as they could, and then they went and got a job. But I figured out at a very early age, the more I learn, the more I can do. And the more I can do, the more opportunities will open up. Ironically, that happened to me as a little kid, as a high school kid. Opportunities kept opening up. It still happens today. I, every single day, wake up to a new adventure. I never know when my phone rings what opportunity will come down the road. And it's all because, in my case, education is freedom. It made all the difference in the world for my life.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I know that you wrote a book about that, and I definitely want to bring that up. But let me go back to some of the things you said. You talked a little bit
Sure.
about this concept that you gelled, or you were drawn to education in and of itself. And that's pretty interesting considering you didn't really have a role model per se in your household. Where were you in the hierarchy of your siblings? Were you the middle child, youngest, oldest?
I was the last. I was the youngest, and the youngest by quite a measure. It was 8 years between me and the next closest sibling.
How old was your oldest sibling?
Oldest was 20 years older than I.
So you
Yeah,
kind of had
big
a
difference.
built-in, you kind of had like a built-in aunt or uncle in your,
Kind of, yeah,
and
a little
so
bit.
your
Yeah,
parents were older.
parents were older, and it was the result of a mixed marriage. Kind of, my dad had a son. My mom had a couple of daughters. They got together, had two more. Then I came along 8 years later.
So what area in the States were you raised?
Very small town in Massachusetts. And if people think of the Northeast, they think of a big megalopolis, this giant urban area. You get 40 miles west of Boston, it gets real rural real fast. And I mean, it's not Appalachia, but it is. I literally grew up with no running water, a pump outside, an outhouse,
Wow.
that sort of thing. Yeah, I know. I know.
Wow. So
I know.
you said that it kind of it clicked for you in high school, about high school with regard to the education. Were you involved in like any clubs, or what did you get exposed to? Some people get exposed to sports, some people get exposed to different things in school that kind of puts them on a path. What was your exposures?
So this is really the example. I was exposed to everything because I wanted to learn. So when I was in grammar school, I they passed out these little flutophones, right? And in grammar school, and I learned music, and I was fascinated. So I wanted to learn more music. So I ended up playing the trumpet. I ended up playing with a little youth orchestra. I played. I was the echo for taps for the Memorial Day parade, and I mean those kinds of things. Again, the more I learned, the more I could do, and it was like, wow, I'm 10 years old, and I've been invited to be playing in the Memorial Day parade. Why? Because I learned. So that sort of positive reinforcement that, wow, when I learn something, I get to do cool things, led me to want to learn sports. So I was captain of my baseball team, co-captain of my baseball team in high school, played football, played basketball, joined the newspaper. I was, assistant editor for the high school newspaper. I ran for social, for student government. And it was an obsession with realizing that the more I learned about something, the more I could do. And I wanted to broaden that horizon and learn as much as I could about as many things as I could. And honestly, I still do that today.
I could tell that you do, and we are essentially being on these platforms now too, doing even more, right?
We're learning.
We're learning.
Yeah.
Um,
I had no idea. I didn't know what social media was. I mean, well, now I take that back. I was fortunate to be, you didn't go through my background yet, but I was chairman and CEO of Blockbuster in the days when we were trying to take it digital. We were trying to, bring it into streaming. That's a whole different story because we also had $1 billion of debt in the middle of a financial crisis. But we were the first advertisers for Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook. It was Blockbuster. I think it may have been Pepsi, PepsiCo, a couple of other media companies were the first advertisers on the Facebook platform. And we had a big event in New York. So I was a very early adopter of social media. But I mean, look at me. I'm not exactly your prototypical influencer, right? So I never really had much following other than friends and family, but I was an early adopter. Well, up until recently, I probably had a couple thousand followers, whatever. And now all of a sudden I have a video that has over 40 million views that just went crazy viral because I've learned the platform. I've learned how to use social media and why to use social media. So I had to learn.
we're going to put that video, we'll embed it in here, that 40 million, so that people can see it if they're watching the show or if they want to click on it. But that goes back, I think, to your early years, what you were saying and segueing. I know we'll get into some discussion points on your career, but that you were like a sponge early on as
Yeah.
far as trying, you were willing to learn all different things. And it sounds to me growing up that you weren't kind of like put in you weren't cookie cut into a particular mold. Like a lot of people go through life, and especially in their high school years, where they're either jocks or they're nerds. All these different terms that people use, that they fall into a certain area. I remember myself personally. I was like a mesh of all different things. I played sports, yes, but I also was involved in music. I was also involved in, organizations that were, the physics club and different things like that I enjoyed doing. And I also remember, it was odd. I remember that I would get judged by the group that I was in, different from the other group. I mean, the groups had their own little code, so to speak, and they didn't understand. And I used to get really frustrated where there'd be criticism going back and forth across the groups. And I was the one that I was always trying to be conciliatory and let everybody get along and grow. Who knows? Maybe that's how part why I ended up getting into the law and these other things. But, this concept of education is freedom, and that you talk about, and as you go through it, and with me with social media, I really leaned into this uncomfortable world because I didn't really know anything of it. There was no necessity for me to get in this space. I have God bless, I have a very good legal career. My wife has got an aesthetic practice. We're doing fine. But I got exposed to it from a young friend, really close friend, and it just opened up my eyes to something that was new and I was inquisitive about. And I wanted to kind of lean into that uncomfort because I wanted to learn, similar to what you were referencing. What was your impetus, though, as you were going through your career, younger and growing up, and then, college, and these decisions that you made, where you were able to fight the demons of not being able to learn it, not being able to do it, not being able to succeed in these endeavors? Because it sounds to me like you were very open to trying anything. And I know in our offline discussions, you continue to this day in that approach. So what do you think has been the impetus for that for you?
Adversity, crisis. Adversity, I think you'll find, I've learned, adversity breeds persistence and determination. If you let it, a crisis can create two things. It can create victimhood. I give up. I'm a loser, blah, 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 insecurities, all that stuff. Or it can breed resilience and determination. And in my case, thank goodness, something switch flipped in me, and I said, I am not going to let this determine the rest of my life. I have to take control of my life, and it's up to me. And I'm not going to be a victim of this situation. So if I need to take control of my own education because I don't have mom and dad standing over me saying, do your homework, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to succeed on my own. So that self determination kicked in with me. And you can see it happen. You can see it happen. Change is real. Change happens. And people respond to change in two ways. They can either blame, resist, be depressed by it, let it beat them, or they can respond to change in a positive fashion and say, look, I don't like this. It's uncomfortable, but I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to move on, and I'll be a better person on the other side.
It's a
choice.
It really is. And you cover interesting points that we talk about a lot on the podcast with a lot of guests like your type of caliber, and that, without pain, there can be no progress. In other words, if you want to change, it's not going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. In order to grow, you have to accept that change and all these different adages. But I guess you had instilled in you, and you kind of also had proof of concept. And what I mean by that is you achieved, and you've achieved some of these goals or the tasks that you took on. I think what happens in life with people is that they see so many things in front of them, 10, 15, 20 different things in front of them, and get overwhelmed by the let's just say the amount of potential adversity that they're faced with, rather than dealing with one challenge at a time and not being defined by that particular challenge and where they are with it.
Yeah.
And to continue to fight and move forward without this victimhood, which we know appears to exist a lot. And I talked about this as well, in that, unfortunately, I think some of the younger generation were let's just say, coddled more so in their earlier years, in which they weren't really exposed to the challenges that life throws at us, right? And
Yeah.
while parents attempting to do, listen, I want to make it better for you, I want to make it easier for you, you do a disservice at times for your child, because your child is going to eventually be on their own, and they're going to have to learn how to deal and cope with life and what goes on. So take me to the path. I mean, you ended up going to an Ivy League school. Talk a little bit about that, and take us to your first real job, so to speak.
First of all, speak to this issue of the obstacles, because you look at obstacles. There's no way I could afford college, and everybody now. I just did a radio show this morning, and they were saying, "Well, cost of college is out of control, et cetera, et cetera." And I said, "No, it's not. It's really not. It's this crazy mindset that we have. We've gotten this victimhood thing that everything's bad." When I was graduating from high school, college was $10,000. I was making $1.25 at McDonald's.
Wow.
That was completely out of sight. There's no way I could afford college. But if you dial forward in today's dollars, that would have been $60,000. Well, that's about what college costs today. So no one's doing the math. No one's saying, wait a minute, it's not any more expensive today than it was. In fact, it may be arguably less expensive today, because when I was going to college, there wasn't a huge endowment. There wasn't massive financial aid. Today, the average 4-year school has anywhere from 30 to 50% discount rate. In other words, they're not really charging $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. On average, the student pays $40,000, $30,000, $40,000, which is arguably less in 1980 dollars than it was back then. So all of these are excuses. They're all narrative, and they become obstacles. They become things that people say, well, I guess I can't. And but I'm going to put this in business terms, because I didn't look at it this way because I was not a business guy, right? I was blindly saying, I look around, I see people that are successful. They've got a college degree. I got to have a college degree. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out, right? So that was my attitude. What I didn't know is this, and this is what I wish I could have told myself. All business decisions come down to an investment. That investment is made by looking at the future income streams. It's called the net present value calculation, right? Future income streams from this investment discounted back to today's cost of money. And so, okay, that's how I make a business decision. Well, that's how I made my college decision. I didn't know this at the time, but thank God I did, because I figured out a way to pay for it through a combination of working my butt off and loans. But that investment paid huge dividends and continues to pay dividends for the rest of my life.
It's to me, education is key. I do not necessarily view education as a prerequisite for success. We get into discussions with regard to success on the podcast all the time. And, success can be measured in a multiple different, there's so many different ways, and people define it differently. But I just view education as more of a tool. It provides you with a background to be able to do other things. I tell people say, well, law school, why you want to be a lawyer? You're going to be a lawyer. There's tons of lawyers out there. Well, you know what? So they're not me or whatever. And you take that law degree and it could potentially open up other doors. I do think, though, with education, people need to be mindful of, like you said, that discussion point about net present value and in the investment in it. I think, unfortunately, sometimes people get eclipsed by their passion for an altruistic goal and don't necessarily have the guidance or the forethought as to what's going to happen. What's the end game associated with that goal or what I'm pursuing? Whether it be, studying rocks or an artistic endeavor, and then, getting loaded on debt associated with that, and then, scrambling away or praying that the government is going to waive the costs associated with, going to school. So I think there's a balance that needs to be had with regard to that decision-making process. I mean, you fell into business right away. It seems you knew business, but you seemed to do the the artistic, the music, some of the other stuff. But somehow you were drawn the business path, which from a practical perspective, that does afford one additional opportunities more so than somebody who's going to study geology or the artworks of Picasso. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm gonna blow up your argument.
Okay, I love this. Come at me.
No, because it is sort of the narrative that's out there today that, there's all these people racking up all these debts with all these irrelevant degrees. Well, my undergraduate degree was political science. I don't use political science today, other than getting annoyed when I watch a debate on TV. And I want to climb in their bodies and speak for them, and I want to create a real ideology. No, I don't use political science today, and I had no intention to go into business. What political science did for me is a whole host of things. I learned to write, I learned to think, I learned the importance of collaboration and how collaboration works in the democratic process. So I learned things that were ultimately valuable in the business world, but I did not set out to learn business. I didn't even know what business was. I truly had no idea, zero aspiration for the business world. I wanted to be a lawyer like you. Why? Because that's all I knew. I don't know. I want to be the best I can be. They make a lot of money. They wear a suit and they sound smart. I want to be one of them. So that's why I studied political science. Thank goodness I had a professor intercept me. He was a college history teacher. And he intercepted me and said, "Jim, you're going to make a terrible lawyer. You're a little ADHD, and I've seen you in class for 2 years. You're going to hate contracts." So promise me you'll at least get an MBA. I had never heard of the concept of an MBA, a master's in business. Didn't even know what it was. He convinced me to apply because Columbia they were one of the first schools that had a joint degree program, JD MBA in 4 years.
I almost did it at Seton Hall. I almost did that at Seton Hall. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. So that was the path that I set out on. I opened by saying my whole life has been opportunistic. But the point is, one could argue I would have wasted my money on a political science career. What was I going to do? Grow up and be a political scientist, if not a lawyer? No. So, but what it did is it gave me a license to learn. And it could have been I was an art history major, but I would still be learning. I could have been a lot of things, especially at that college level, because to specialize that early, let's face it, at 17, 18, 19 years old, most of us don't know what we want. We don't know what our passion for life is. We don't know what we're going to be good at. So what's important is that learning process, the formalized discipline. One other thing that you mentioned that's really important. Not everybody needs a college degree to be successful, but be careful. We got Peter Thiel out there saying, the tech guy saying, you don't need college, just go learn coding. You'll be fine. look, that's the equivalent of Michael Jordan saying, you don't need to go to college, just go play basketball. You can join the NBA. You know, 0.001 of us have the ability, determination, persistence, work ethic to be an NBA star. But the same thing applies to being an entrepreneur. Not all of us are cut out to be an entrepreneur and be able to make it on our own. Most of us need that formal process and structure that an education, and especially a college education, brings. So my argument here is, be careful not to wake up and get lured into these. I want to go be a basketball star. Maybe I want to go be a tech entrepreneur. Maybe you're a heck of a lot better off with that degree in case you need to pivot in 10 years, 20 years.
I agree. I agree with you. I think that makes sense. I will push back at you a little bit in that I believe that the education is crucial for many. I agree with you. There's first of all, we as entrepreneurs are a rare breed. I tell the community all the time, we're crazy. We have a little ADHD. We are against the grain to begin with. It takes a lot of risk. It's kissing a lot of frogs. It's failure ridden, but it's something that it's our calling, whatever it may be. And some people find it on later in life. Some people figure it out early in life. Some people try and say, no, that's not for me. And that's fine too. But with regard to education, I do believe education formally does provide you with the tools, as you suggested. You got those tools in political science, but I believe you got those tools in political science per se, the habits of study, the habits of learning, temperance, understanding, comprehension. And that allowed you to springboard into an election on the business side and opened up the door for you for an MBA. I caution, and I will to this day, caution getting a degree just for the sake of getting a degree. That's the part where I caution the youth. That, getting a degree in philosophical, some esoteric degree where, you have to be careful if your goal is to somehow support yourself some way, somehow. If you have an altruistic goal and you don't necessarily, you're not necessarily concerned at that point about, what your plans are in the future, and everybody's got a different scenario, I can understand it. But we do have a lot of kids who are waiting tables with a lot of letters after their name because they didn't go through that process. And maybe they do have some of the skill sets that you used that they had in school, but they can't find a job for whatever reason. Part of it, and I don't mean to go off on this, but another area that I think needs to be brought up too in the workplace that you may have dealt with towards the end of where you were, but I don't know. We're going to get into the CEO role because you may have been isolated in some respects. I was a vice president of a corporate company as well for a period of time. God bless you. And I do want to talk about how you dealt with the political worlds in general, because me as an entrepreneur, I had a short, brief period in it. And I call it situational ethics to be able to live in that world. But as far as these kids are concerned and what they go through, it seems like nobody's saying no to them. Nobody's, saying to them, this isn't a good choice. What are the ultimate consequences associated with the decisions that you're making? And I know we're a sponge. We're young kids. We're ebbing and flowing. We don't necessarily know what we want. But the parents who just let Jimmy be Jimmy, I don't want to make this a political platform, but just you're a girl. You want to be a girl. You're a boy, but you want to be a girl. Okay, you could be a girl. I mean, there does appear to be, culpability, unfortunately, attached to it, but also societal issues that we deal with. And what's the repercussions of that? The repercussions of that is you can't get a job because you can't handle stress. You can't handle the adversity that you talked about, right? I mean, there's so many variables to it. What are some of your thoughts about it?
You just put on a Jack Nicholson moment. Oh, you can't handle the truth.
That's right.
All I know is I identify as a golden retriever. I honestly, and with all due respect, I think that we are all becoming a bunch of grumpy old men worrying about stuff we don't need to worry about. Every generation looks at the next generation back and says, "What a mess."
So we become our parents. We become our parents.
Yeah, we have. You just became your parents, right? I mean, think about your parents, and I'm a little. I have a little more vintage than you, but I mean, my parents. Now, my parents were a little bit different because they were kind of messed up themselves. But my generation was pot smoking, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, hippie freak, anti-establishment. I mean, walking out, protesting Vietnam, joining the Symbionese Liberation Army. I mean, our parents must have looked at us and said, "What is wrong?" I mean, they were the greatest generation. They fought World War II, and they thought we were a disaster, right? And look, we turned out okay. Look what's happened.
I mean, good point of reference.
Yeah. So here's what I worry about. We've gotten ourselves worked into this narrative that, not all degrees are good, and some kids are wasting money doing it, and colleges are teaching them bad stuff. That's a bunch of old men running around wringing their hands, from my perspective. And here's what's dangerous about it. The more you discourage a young person from learning, I don't care what they want to learn. If they want to go learn basket weaving, the more you discourage that and say, just go be a plumber, you'll be fine. I'm nervous that when they wake up in the information age 20, 30 years from now, they're going to be saying, why did I listen to those people telling me I shouldn't waste my money on college? Because they won't have the ability to pivot, to be able to say, I really don't like being a plumber. I'd rather have my own plumbing company, but I don't really have even an associate's degree. So when I go to the bank and try to raise money for my own plumbing company, they're telling me, why would we lend you the money? Right. So here's the way I look at it. I'm going to net this out. College is not for everybody, but opportunity is. And what formalized education represents is the platform from which you can unlock opportunity.
Very well said.
You don't have to do it. No one's forcing you to do it. But I encourage everybody to keep their eyes open and antenna up for that opportunity. And it's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's very well said. I agree. It does provide opportunity. And yes, the youth are, I talked about this with one of my guests. If you look up to one particular individual during your journey through education and are dissuaded, that could be a crucial point in your life.
Exactly.
And if you respect that individual, like you said, the pivot can be in a negative direction. So that is a good point that you raise, and something that we should consider. Let's dive a little bit into the career itself, the evolution. You don't wake up and say, I'm a CEO, okay? You don't wake up to that point. The aspirations and the pressures and what you went through, and the failures, the successes, the issues. You dealt with Sarbanes-Oxley during different time periods, Enron. I mean, I can go on and on about the transparent, the things that you went through, the issue.
Yeah.
Some people will use it as a sword. Oh, Blockbuster, they lost the deal with Netflix. I mean, everybody's got their own anecdotal story where they think they know the answer, but you lived it. So share a little bit with our audience, a little bit about, how you ended up becoming a CEO. I know probably once you become a CEO of one entity, it's a little easier laterally to move, in that direction. I found that even in myself when you're an executive, you kind of move. And I have close friends who are executives, and they move laterally to different corporations in a specific space. But share with us your personal journey.
I'm gonna start by going back to a story that you gave, which was when you were a kid and you wanted to do all kinds of different things. You wanted to play sports, and yet you wanted to be, doing these clubs and these other in music. And you said what happened was you found yourself in this awkward situation where some friends were kind of throwing rocks at you, not understanding, why do you want to do that? You're weird, that whatever it was. And that experience that you had is a metaphor for what happens in the corporate world. If you're an accountant, then the marketing people are going to think you're a bean counter, you're a nerd, blah, blah, blah. If you're a marketing person, the accounting people are going to look down their noses. You don't know about business. You don't know anything about numbers. If you're an operations person, you're going to look at the finance department and say, "Oh, what a bunch of wussies, green eye shade people. They're keeping me from doing what I need to do." Right? It's a form of tribalism, a form of insecurity, frankly, that we learn in grammar school, unfortunately. Think about the kid who raises his hand. I was one of those kids. I know. And then, the spitballs come, right? The after class bully saying, "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Why are you such a nerd in class? Blah, blah, blah." There is a natural human instinct to almost a herd-like instinct for people to meld into the herd, the pack, the tribe, right? And not get outside of it. So if you're a sports guy, you're a sports guy. And if you're a music person, you're a music person. And if you're an arts person, you're an arts person. And very rarely does someone like me or you get to move freely in between those. What made you willing to do that?
Oh,
Think about it.
Yeah.
What made you have the
Oh, I wanted to.
ability?
I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn. I didn't like bullies, and I also didn't like to be pigeonholed. I didn't like the stereotype. And in fact, ironically, you're bringing up these issues from youth to corporate world. I lived that corporate world when I was in a corporate environment. I actually got the pushback from what I call the politicians who were protecting their little fiefdom, because I was in the legal side, and if I got into the underwriting side, it was an insurance company. If I got into the marketing side, they would be threatened by my approach. And when I joined the organization, I was hired more or less as a change agent. When I look back in retrospect, and I think in part it was because of my personality and how I am. It was a company that acquired another company and needed change, and it was to me, it was so exhausting when I look back at it. And God bless the people who can do it. It's not me. Where they want to stay in their world and nobody is allowed in their world. And it's where I use the term situational ethics, unfortunately, in part, and protecting one's turf. And you made a really good point that we are human beings. We're tribal. We all want to be part of something. But that does start at a very young age.
Starts at a very young age. It's almost natural. It's instinct. In the course of writing my book, I did a lot of research on what causes this. And it comes down to fear. It comes down to our caveman portion of our brain, that we fear change. We fear things that are different from us. Yeah. They threaten us. And so we revert back to our fight or flight behaviors, our caveman behaviors in the classroom, in the workplace, etc. And it's all driven by fear, insecurity. So the antidote to all of this, that's why I went back to your story. And I'm glad you experienced it not only in the school environment, but in the work environment. If you say, what was my key to success and being able to be a CEO, is that I recognized that at an early age. And I'll give you some examples. I tuned that all out as a kid, and thank God I did, because my athlete friends didn't want me playing music. I mean, come on, are you a wussy? My music friends didn't want me to be a jock. They're different from us. Heaven forbid, I was an artist, right? So I just blocked all that out and said, you know what? That's their problem, not mine. I don't care. I'm gonna do this. And that confidence that I had really prevailed. So I excelled in sports, I excelled in academics, I excelled in the arts, and I was able to, as a result, that's how I got into college, because I did all those things. I differentiated myself from the pack. So take that learning now, and then I'll give you a couple of work experiences. One of my first jobs, my dad was a factory worker, a hardworking guy, and he didn't want me to have anything to do with the factory, right? That's why he used to encourage me. I don't know what to tell you, but all I know is in those books somewhere, the more you learn, they can't take that away from you, right? That was his standard advice. So I went to work. I wanted to experience it. I went to work at his factory, not his factory, but the place he worked on a machine. And I did it for a summer. I got in so much trouble. Tough blue collar environment. This is an abrasives factory, right? I mean, they're taking big blocks of stone and putting it on these machines and cutting them into little blocks of abrasives, right? To make grinding wheels and abrasive blocks. I mean, it's tough working guy environment. I'm in there. Well, I'm a little bit of an athlete, so I'm busting my butt because I'm going to make, they've got something called piecework. The more you make, the more you can earn. I'm like, I got this, man. I'm cranking on this machine, and I start getting into a rhythm, and I'm blowing away the numbers. And I'm going, wow, this is awesome. I'm going to make so much money this summer. I'll be able to, I don't have to work 2 jobs outside of this. I'll just be able to make enough money. What do you think happens?
I don't know. You were showboating, and people started
Well,
giving you.
good.
Let me guess.
Well, yeah,
You got the peer pressure. Like, hey, guy, what are you doing? You're showboating. You're making us look
yeah,
bad.
yeah. Same thing, right? So I only in a blue collar environment, it was a little worse than that. It wasn't like, hey, dude, you're making us look bad. Be nice, blah blah blah. No, it was like, look, a
Yeah,
hole.
yeah, 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 yeah.
You're effing it up for the rest of us. Come on, stop that. Don't work so hard. And I'm going, hey, thanks, but I need to make money. Plus, they're breaking all kinds of rules. They're making me punch them out early, not punch them out literally, but
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
they have punch cards. So this guy leaves at 2 o'clock, and he says, "Hey, you're gonna when you punch out, you're gonna punch my card too at 5." Like, I can't do that. And so it was a shock for me to see this behavior, but it brought me back to that classroom. It brought me back to grade school. I was the kid raising my hand. I know. It was the same thing, and they were basically, the environment was trying to force me into tribal behavior. Let's conform, right? Well, it ended up leading to a fight. I mean, I ignored it for a while, and then kind of, it turned into a pretty ugly scene, rolling down a flight of stairs in the factory, and everybody coming around. All these guys, fight, fight. The foreman coming out, and I'm lucky this guy didn't kill me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he was a bad dude, and I get called into the general manager's office. What's the matter with you? And I tell him, what's going on. He goes, look, Jim. And I thought, he's general manager of the plant, right? He's gonna get it. He's gonna be like, oh, I'll discipline them. It's like, you don't understand. That's the way it works.
Wow.
It's the way we do it here. And you may not like it, but it just is what it is. And so I was like, whoo, man, my dad was right. Thank God I got out of that blue collar environment, get my first job, end up graduate. I'm in an internship at Columbia. I get on the Gulf Oil Corporation in Houston, and I'm in an office in Gulf Oil. I'm wearing a tie, going to work, and I'm showing up at 6 a.m. and I'm working till 8 at night. What do you think happens?
The same thing.
Same thing. Exactly. Didn't end up in fisticuffs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was bullying. It was, hey, idiot, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. You screwed it up. You're just here for the summer. What are you trying to do? You're making us look bad. So here's why I started by saying my life has been filled with adversity that leads to opportunity, crisis that leads to success. And those examples were the best thing that could have happened to me, because I said, you know what? If that's the way it is, I'm going to do what I did in grammar school. I'm going to tune it out. I'm going to say, that's your problem, not mine. And I'm going to keep doing it. And at the end of the day, if this company doesn't like what I'm doing, let them fire me. And I'll go to some place that does appreciate this, because I'm doing the right thing for the company and the right thing for me. I'm making decisions with data. I'm working my butt off. Let them fire me. And that attitude, that sense of confidence, was how I got to move through job after job after job in the corporate environment. And believe me, I had my share of inbound missiles and grenades and all
Oh,
kinds of nasty things.
I could only imagine. I mean, grown individuals, like basically like children on a playground. I used to say, I even say to this day, and I still litigate cases. I say, can't we just play nice in the sandbox? I mean, it's just, it's just ridiculous what goes on. But I think you bring up such an interesting point for our listeners and our viewers, that they need to take some of these great nuggets. And one of them is that from a leadership perspective, if you're leading a company, if you're in the model of running your own business, whatever it may be at any level, that you have to be mindful when you're managing and leading these people, what their pain points are and what is kind of, let's just say, motivating them. You have to be able to, it's an art, right? Not everybody can do that. And you recognize that earlier on, which got you to that point. So it's not so much of validating one's particular position in any particular argument. It's getting them to move, right? Getting them to the next place, because you as the leader, as the visionary, are not necessarily concerned with the drama or what may be going on. You need to, in spite of themselves, get them to the next place.
Exactly. It's exactly right. And the understanding that it's not personal, because this is what happens. We react. So you've got someone with caveman-like behavior. They're in the boardroom with a flight or fight syndrome. They're either being passive aggressive and not saying what they think, or they're fighting with you. I mean, they're ready to come to blows over what? Over a silly issue that could be resolved, right? But they get all emotional about it. So when you see that behavior, then to be able to recognize it and say, okay, this is not about me. It's their issue, not mine. They're reacting. How do I defuse this situation? I am not going to back down, because if I'm doing the right thing and I'm armed with data, then I need to get them to come around. But I'm also not going to be able to get them to come around unless I get them out of that fight or flight mindset, which comes down to they are reacting out of fear. The antidote to fear, knowledge. How do I bring knowledge to the table? How do I decompress, de-escalate this situation by bringing data, by stepping back and saying, you know what, let's just get some information. Let's collect some more information and let's sit down and talk about it. Let's look at it together. It doesn't always work, because sometimes people just can't get out of that fear thing. But the worst thing we can do is when we react. And I'm a human. I can't help it. Someone gets mad at me. They want to fight with me. My first reaction is fight back. I have to suppress that and go with knowledge. You want a great analogy? Okay, so I've been saying this a lot. I've been trying to, this book was, writing this thing was a wonderful experience.
Let's segue into that. Let's go into this. Education for Freedom, this book that Life Passion that Jim put together. It's a book that you said it took a couple of years for you to put it together. And you've recently what you've recently done with it. Let me bring this up now. You've recently partnered with Mr. Beast, who we have come to know. I didn't really know who he was as well, and we'll put a link and a shout out to him in this social media platform for us as well. You're giving away
Yeah.
$10,000 scholarships to
Yes.
the youth worldwide to
All over the world.
Okay, and allow you to talk a little bit about that book and what it means.
Sure. Well, I'm going to use the example. I didn't put this in the book, but this kind of came out of the research that I did for the book, because I tried to get into this question of why do people behave the way they do? What causes this fear? Because it's a big obstacle to it's an obstacle to students in their academic path. It's an obstacle to professionals in their corporate career. It's an obstacle to entrepreneurs. Fear is real, and it seeps into an organization. It's a killer of careers. It's a killer of companies. So I tried to figure out what causes it and what's the antidote to it. The best analogy I could give you is that I'm a pilot, and it's just been another one of those things. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a little kid, and my eyes weren't good enough, and so I thought, well, I can't be an astronaut, but I can at least learn to fly. So I've been flying
Wow.
for over 40 years. Yeah, and I was trying to figure this fear thing out, because you don't want the guys up front when you're in a commercial airline. You don't want them having that same corporate boardroom dynamic, right?
Of course.
I mean, what if they have a crisis?
Sure.
What if they have a problem up there and they start fighting at each other? It could happen. What if they have that passive aggressive thing we see in the boardroom? Well, I don't know. Yeah, sure. You want to put this thing in a nosedive? Go ahead.
Yeah.
That can't happen in the cockpit like it does in the boardroom or like it does in the schoolyard. So what's the antidote? And I thought about that, and I was thinking, well, what am I trained to do as a pilot? Well, I go once a year to a place called Flight Safety, and they lock me in a simulator for 3 days, and they try to kill me.
Oh,
They
okay.
give me engine fires. They give me all kinds of catastrophic events. Now I do it single pilot. I'm a little unusual that I'm checked out in a jet to fly it single pilot. So I legally can get up there by myself, but they can also, I used to fly with a crew, with a co-pilot, either with a crew or by myself. Here's what they do to address that fear instinct, to overcome that human reaction, because you can't react in the cockpit out of fear. If you do, you will either fight the aircraft and over control it and rip the wings off, or you will flight. In other words, I don't know what to do,
You may
so I'm not going to
freeze.
do
Yeah,
anything.
you may freeze. Sure.
Freeze, and the airplane will spin out of control. Right? Either of those behaviors can kill you in the airplane. So you can't get away with the same behavior that you get away in the boardroom. You can't get away with the same behavior that those guys in the shop floor got away with. You can't get away with the same behavior as a grammar school kid. How do you fix that? What they train me to do every year, 3 days, emergency after emergency after emergency. The first thing I do, let's take one emergency, decompression of the airplane. We've lost all pressure. I'm going to die in 10 seconds at 40,000 feet if I don't get my mask on. The first thing is a memory item. I reach for my oxygen mask. I put it on. The second thing is I've got to get the aircraft down. So I pull back the power and I put it into a descent to get down to a safe altitude. The very next thing I do, and this is the critical piece, is I don't know what to do next. So I reach over and I pull out my emergency checklist. That's data. That's knowledge. So that training that I have gives me some memory items that I have to do for memory. I don't have time to be scared. I got to get that mask on immediately because I only have 10 seconds or I'll pass out. I'll have a Payne Stewart moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I reach for the data, for the knowledge to be able to correct the problem that caused depressurization of the aircraft in the first place. And so what I'm trained to do is use knowledge to overcome fear. It's as simple as that. And if we could get people in the boardroom to, rather than react out of fear, to whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's an issue, to revert to data, to knowledge, to the facts. That's the behavior set that a pilot uses to overcome the caveman instinct. So how do we invoke our aviator brain, not our caveman brain?
Yeah, and that's the fight human compulsion component essentially that everybody deals with in real life circumstances, and the personalization
Exactly.
associated with it. And we know that some people have better control than others, but it sounds to me like your approach obviously was successful in the many years that you've been, you were in a leadership role. And I believe that these are incredible, I call them knowledge nuggets of wisdom for all levels of people who listen and watch our show, about things that they can implement. This concept of how do we get into one's fear. How do we dilute that, right? Like you said, this
Yeah.
knowledge is part of it. Education is part of it. Explanation as to why we're doing certain things. I think sometimes I struggle, even in my role with my teams. I have different teams for this and for other businesses. I see it, but sometimes I don't explain the specifics as to how to get there. And I'm
Yeah.
also not the type of person who, I always use this term, nobody likes to know how a hot dog is made. They just want to know it tastes good. And so I tend to take this approach of this vision of things, but I try to surround myself with tacticians, with people that I know have a skill set that I don't necessarily have, to help me get across the finish line. So I have that introspective view and knowledge of that I can't do this stuff alone, but we have to go, we
Yeah.
have to go there. I think we have to have, as leaders, more of a broader view. And you made a very interesting point. It's not personal. And it should never be personal.
Exactly. Exactly.
But
No, exactly.
that's probably what you dealt with. And probably I'd say 80% of the time, the people tend to get caught up in this. Well, if we go that way, they're not believing in me, or somehow they make it about themselves and the decisions, maybe the company doesn't value me as much, or this or that, or who knows, you can go down a rabbit hole of things.
Absolutely. That natural insecurity, that belief in that maybe we're not good enough, you know, it eats at us. And you just nailed, interestingly, you nailed the three elements that are the platform of the book. You just nailed them. As we talked, I don't think you even realize you said this, but we talked about the importance of dealing with change, right? And being able to adapt, and the importance to have confidence and not revert to that, you know, uh, that personal lack of confidence, that insecurity, or give in to somebody else's lack of confidence that's trying to make it personal on me, right? So confidence is the second thing. And then the third you also nailed, which is the clarity, the simplicity. Einstein said, if you can't understand something well enough to explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it well enough yourself. And so we talked about a video that I have that's got 40 million views. Well, the reason that video went viral is a young man put a microphone in my face and said, "What's the key? How did you become a CEO?" I said, "I'll give you my gift. It's simple. I have been able to adapt to change and embrace it, find the good in it, whatever it is. I've been able to have confidence to rise above the issues and to power through even a crisis. And I have this weird sense of simplicity and clarity that it's required both in listening so that I can understand a complicated situation, and in communicating. Because if I can't explain something, then who in the world is going to follow it? If I can't explain my strategy, I can't lead if you can't follow. Right?
Yeah. Keep it simple. I learned it in law school, that mnemonic, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Just essentially,
Yeah,
and that can be essentially put on, so life, all these different
it
things that
is.
you've gone through.
Yeah. Change, confidence, and clarity. Literally, if you can burn those into your
Three
brain.
C's.
3 C's. Yeah. Well, I've expanded it in the book. I ended up with 9 C's. And here's what I did. I call it the C-suite for success, and the C-suite of learnings, because the three that I gave you, the 3 C's, are what to learn: change, confidence, clarity. If you don't know what to learn, you can't go past go, right? And then I added the how to learn, and that's things like critical thinking, just pure scientific method, having a hypothesis, testing it out, revising your point of view after you have data, etc. Critical thinking, curiosity, that what you had that made you want to be a musician and an athlete, and it's that natural curiosity and creativity, the ability to, Einstein also called creativity intelligence, having fun, so having fun with learning. So those are the hows. And the whys I put in the book are probably the most important. I don't know, they're all important, but I added 3 more C's. Again, I'm trying to keep this simple. So 3 C's for what to learn, 3 C's for how to learn. The 3 C's for why are collaboration, because that's what we've said. We tend to be great individual performers, but an orchestra sounds a heck of a lot better than a solo
Exactly.
horn.
Yeah.
And then in order to, I've got this beautiful metaphor for the orchestra that I kind of stumbled on in the course of, I didn't put it in the book. I wish I had, but I thought about it in the context of, if the orchestra, if the instruments were people, don't you know that the violin's going to be looking at the tuba going, you fat thing, what's the matter with you? You sound stupid. What's wrong? And then they're all going to pick on the oboe for being squeaky, and and they're going to look at the bass going, so they're going to make fun of each other, right? But you put them together, and what beautiful harmony. So I call that in my book cultural literacy, because the more we can surround ourselves with people that are not like us, like, if I'm going to sound better if I pull in my violin friends, and it's the same in life. The more we can surround ourselves by people that have different race, different religion, different culture, different upbringing, we're going to learn from them, and the result will be better. It'll be a better harmony. So those are the 2 C's. And then the final C in the why to learn is character, integrity, humility, gratitude. Those basic elements of character that, the way I describe it, that's our brand. When someone sees us and talks to us, they see a brand, just like you see a can of Coca-Cola versus a can of Pepsi. And that's what's in us. That's what defines us. And we have to keep working on that. We have to nurture our integrity. We have to nurture our sense of gratitude and our humility and our compassion for others.
I go further. I say it should be safeguarded, and it should be paramount to one's being. I think humility and character, one's reputation, the way they treat people, the way, I always say sometimes you can tell how one behaves when they don't think you're watching them, and you can see things about people. So I believe holistically, and I kind of take this approach with regard to the platform, is there's multiple things that could make us successful. It's not linear. You talked a lot about I don't want to say intellectual, because you covered a lot of different areas. You covered intellect, you covered dealing with people. It requires an understanding and emotional intelligence, a lot of different areas that are there. That holds true in relationships on the personal side of life. That holds true. Even we get to a point of when I talk about self-love and the ability to take care of oneself and stay healthy, because I get into health and fitness on this platform as well. And we find that, unfortunately, what happens is that people have a tendency to just focus on one particular area to the detriment of the other. Now you're in good shape. I can tell you take care of yourself. I see that there are, well, better than I've seen of many, but I see a lot of people who unfortunately have risen and defined their success to a point where it was predicated on monetary gain, may have been predicated on a title, may have been predicated on providing for their family financial security, but to the detriment of their health. And so now they're chasing that they've got a short runway left in life, and it's the balance, right? It's the balances that we need to try to all achieve. So I let me just ask you from your perspective, because I know I've had you on for a long time and you've had such great nuggets, and I think we may do another deeper dive. See what happens when we do it organically, we don't realize all the different topics we can cover and have this synergy, right? It's just pretty interesting.
Right.
But tell me a little bit about how you were able to navigate your incredible rise in the corporate world. I mean, to a CEO level at international companies, how were you able to balance that with health needs and personal family needs? Because I'm sure you were drawn in so many different directions. And our platform, our people, our entrepreneurs are pulled in millions of directions, and they need some help and guidance in how to navigate that. How were you successful in doing it?
Yeah, I would say my best advice to your audience is don't listen to anything I say when it comes to work-life balance, because I have none.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
No, I'm being honest. It is one of the downsides of the determination, persistence, the whole thing. I'm gonna learn as much as I can about everything, and I'm just wake up every day and I can't wait for the next adventure. I have put those passions in front of that work-life balance. So I don't have any children today.
Okay.
Why? Head down, corporate career, succeed. Marriage can wait. And then when we finally got married, it was like, well, it's not as easy to have children at 40 years old, right? And a lot of people find themselves in that situation. There is unfortunately a biological clock that's real. And again, I look at the Gen Zs, and they have maybe it's because of the living through the pandemic, they have a much better work-life balance, candidly, than I did growing up, and I kind of envy that. So I don't worry about that generation. I actually applaud that generation for having more of that life balance. That's probably a healthy thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that generationally for us, we went through, it's been a little different. I find now that somebody older or you could be younger, but you could be so laser focused on a particular goal that the other areas are not, you're not focusing on that. I'm trying to bring to the platform this concept that it is okay to be concerned, and you should be concerned about those other areas, and don't necessarily exchange one to the detriment of another. But let me just touch on one other issue. You waited a little later, you were older, you got married. You described yourself, and anybody who's listened to our program or watched our program knows that you're obviously type A personality, go-getter. You're a sponge, you want to learn more. So I would say to anybody who is on the fence with regard to a relationship and choosing their spouse or partner, again, what is crucial is that individual choose the partner who supports and recognizes who you are, right? I mean, because you can't get to where you are, right, doing the things that you're doing without the support of a spouse or partner, right?
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. And if that was a conversation that I had, frankly, I had that conversation with potential partners that didn't make it across the finish line, because I knew that their demands would be more than I could fulfill. I couldn't have that partnership as you described it going forward. When I finally did get married, I'm still married to the same person. after over 30 years, it was probably because I had that hard conversation up front, and they knew what they were. There were no surprises
Well,
about who I was.
yeah, and that's just it, and that's such a crucial piece on our platform is that it's one of the most important decisions you could make in any business. I mean, your personal relationship with whoever that person is to ensure, especially when God puts us on this path of entrepreneurship, this gift. I believe it's a gift we have that we're going to take. So ensuring that we have the right person to help us, or else one is going to be miserable in going through this.
Exactly, you're absolutely right, and it's just about communication and being honest with both yourself and your family, to be able to say this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. Now, again, I took it to the extreme. And I would, if I had it to do over and I could go back and talk to my 17-year-old self, I would probably say, okay, dude, chill. You're going to be successful. You're going to have this great career. You can also have a family life that, a balance in your life that is going to be even more fulfilling because you'll have both. You'll have it all at that point. Um, I would encourage people to try to keep a better balance. Like I said, don't use me as a role model for that, for that work-life balance, because I probably messed it up. I had the meter turned way too much over here instead of coming back to the
Well,
center.
let me ask you that. Do you think that was the one of the basis for your success? Do you think that if you didn't act that way, you wouldn't have got to the levels that you got to?
It probably contributed to it, but again, how much success does anyone need? And what is the definition of success?
Exactly.
So, I'll put it in the context of it. It's almost like chasing wealth. Are we really chasing wealth? Are we chasing success? Or are we ultimately chasing happiness and freedom? And so I called the book, I didn't call it Education is Success. I didn't call it Education is Wealth. Success and wealth are both just measurements. They're ways to keep track. But really, the ultimate goal is I have freedom today. I have freedom to travel wherever I want to travel, be with who I want to be with, do the things I want to do. And that freedom is what it's all about. So if you extrapolate that into happiness, take it even one step further, I think everybody needs to come back and say, what makes you happy? And in my case, fiercely independent. So freedom is what happiness is all about for me. But for others, it might be 20 grandkids.
But you made a good, from an entrepreneurial perspective. We had a guest on who talked about he scaled a company to a 50 million plus revenue and sold it. And why did he sell it? Because he wanted that freedom. And his goal
Right.
was the freedom, like you said. And this whole concept of chasing wealth for the purpose of acquiring things is such an empty approach to life that people really don't recognize. And we talk a little bit about somehow slowing that down and trying to embrace and enjoy the journey and the progression of what you're actually going through, because then that does provide you not only with the freedom, but you get a better understanding and self-development of growth. And that in turn, I think, brings back balanced happiness, and
True.
allows you, like you said, the freedoms to do other things.
Yeah, it's true.
So Jim, before we finish out, and I appreciate all your time on this, I do want to go back to the book and the scholarship that you've created. And I know that you said that you partnered. Let me just ask you quickly, how did it develop? Because you're new to social media for the most part. I'm kind of new to social media. How were you able to engage? I guess it's called Mr. Beast. Is his name Jerry? I don't know him. Jimmy
Donaldson.
Yeah.
Jimmy Donaldson.
Talk a little bit.
26 years old. He was one of the early YouTube creators at 14 years old.
Amazing.
Started making YouTube videos. Yeah. He has a following over 260 million subscribers today. It's a phenomenal story. But the best part of his story is, with all the fear of social media and what are kids doing and they're rotting their brains, etc. This young man has turned to philanthropy. He's created something called Beast Philanthropy.
Okay.
And he's out all over the world drilling water wells in arid places in Africa. He is sending young children for surgery for their cleft palates. He's teaching teachers. And in my case, I had an opportunity to partner with him. He was sending 800 teachers to a place called Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta, where they've had an inner city school had some phenomenal success in transforming the way people teach,
Yeah.
the way and students learn. So he brought in 800 teachers to help them learn these techniques. And so I had the opportunity I had been talking with his head of philanthropy, fantastic guy named Darren. And he said, well, how would you like to partner up on a scholarship opportunity when we launched this video? And sure enough, Jimmy held up my book and he said, read this book and then post a video that says why education is freedom. And then post it up, and one of our 10 of you will win one of $10,000 scholarships from anywhere in the world. But here's the best part of this whole program. It is young people now reading this book and learning about education, learning the what, how, and why to learn. But they're then posting a video to tell other young people the power of education. So imagine thousands of videos out there being viewed by thousands more young people, not some old guy like me talking about, hey, education's important, but young people saying on their education really is.
On their platforms that they utilize all the time, right?
Where they live. Yeah. For me, it is such a great example of the power of social media. They're there. We're not going to get them off. We can ban social media platforms all we want. We're not going to change the way young people interact, right? So why not meet them where they live? Why not give them content that they want to see, that's engaging, that still helps them learn?
Case in point, I am such a firm believer in that. One of the reasons why I started the platform and dove into this, and the guests that I've brought on, individuals like yourself, where you have a forum to share with the young people all this knowledge of wisdom. And believe it or not, they crave it. They want to learn. Our platform has, we're small, we're growing, but we're getting such positive feedback across the board because they're not getting it in school. They're not getting entrepreneur stuff in school. They're not getting the support. And even the people who've gone through school and then later on may be stuck in a rut. Maybe in a situation where they find themselves paralyzed by the fear we talked about. So they need to understand that we didn't wake up one day and have the nice car, have the house. We all go through it. And if we can provide tools and mechanisms to help them through it, then we should. And this whole concept you have with this Mr. Beast guy, kudos to that whole bit. I mean, that's awesome that took place and that he's able to use his platform, which in turn, I understand this is how it all happens in this space where people have this synergistic approach and share, audiences for purposes of exposure to be able to reach that ubiquitous world that is social media.
Right. Exactly. And, it's also a great example. I would not have had that opportunity, but for knowledge. I had learned about social media. I had to learn from scratch. It was intimidating. I was scared. I was outside of my comfort zone. I have a 22-year-old telling me, hey, you have to jump and we're going to film you jumping. And when you get to France, you're going to look like you landed in France. And I have to trust her to be able to give me the right advice on these things. And it worked because knowledge then led to opportunity.
Yes.
I would not have had the opportunity to collaborate with someone like Mr. Beast in a brand new area, brand new social media space, but for knowledge.
Love it.
So it's the whole theme of the book is the more you learn, the more you can do. And then you can also have a cute little golden retriever buddy that comes up to you and wants you to pet him in the middle of a podcast.
Love it. Love it. That's our calling. We're done, but ending on such a great note. I really appreciate it. We're going to post the links to the video and the book. If people want to be able to get the book, we'll have that information for them as well. I want to thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your incredible journey. And remember, everybody, don't forget to keep it pro to pro. That's all for today's episode of Pro to Pro. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and gained some valuable insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching and listening, and remember to keep it pro to pro.